So trains and taxis are two of the most popular ways of getting around South Africa. Today on eNCA, we're focusing on how well public transport actually serves the public. And it seems that if you want to get from A to B quickly and safely, you will have to pay. Cheaper modes of transport are battling ailing infrastructure and general inefficiency. Manqoba Mchunu is tracking a situation from Gauteng. Mawande Kheswa joins us from Durban. Ronald Masinda is in Cape Town. Good evening to the three of you. Ronald, I'm going to start with you in Cape Town. You've been tracking what's going on with the train lines in Cape Town. How many metro lines are actually up and running? Because it has been plagued by problems, hasn't it?
Yes, indeed, Sally. Well, according to PRASA in the Western Cape, trains are operating at around 70% capacity during the current level of the lockdown. Now, you would swear that the trains have been operating at a lower level or even just above 70% for about a year, because last year PRASA said that only 32 of the 85 trains are fully functional, and that many of those who are not functional have either been on the receiving end of arson attacks or vandalism. And there's also been a lack of arrest, leading to many to believe that it could possibly be taxi operators behind these arson attacks, given that they've been quite vocal about the competition, not only from trains but also other forms of transport. Who can forget even like last year when we've heard of stories of e-hailing services attacked in areas like Khayelitsha and other cab services. So when we spoke to several people today, we also spoke to Angus McKenzie, Transport Portfolio Chairperson of City of Cape Town. He says that it will take PRASA at least 10 years to revive the central line, which is obviously important for many working class people from areas from Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain. But Leonard Ramatlakane, the PRASA board chair, is very optimistic that things will be up and running later this year on that central line, where thousands, if not hundreds and thousands of people depend on train services. Let's take a listen to what he had to say earlier.
As you know, that the central line has been dysfunctional for more than a year because of the problem and the damage that was done there. Vandalized, the rail ripped apart, the OTHE ripped apart, so there's been nothing there. So the process has been, now that we embarked upon, is to rebuild it, refurbish the central line. And you know that we have put a deadline that we should be in the next half of the year. In other words, October, November, that line must be fully operational. So that's what we're doing. We want that deadline to be met. Last week, the PRASA in the Western Cape has approached the High Court in terms of the application to help us help the people that are squatting or illegally on the rail line to be moved, so that we can start fixing the line, so that we can bring back the train by the second half of the year, November, so on. So we want to meet the deadline. The delay may only be because the knock-on effect may well be that the delay it takes to get the people off, it's a delay that affects our work in terms of repair. But we are determined to get to that point.
There are some real problems with the central line there in Cape Town. Manqoba, coming to you in Gauteng. We're staying with the topic of railways, but really we're going to the other extreme now, because you were on the Gautrain earlier today. So it's highly efficient, but it's also very expensive, isn't it?
Indeed, Sally. Many of the people that we spoke to, Sally, saying that they actually prefer to use the Gautrain, given the fact that it is quite a reliable system. You'll know, Sally, that this particular system has scheduled trains that arrive on certain times, and many of the commuters saying that the fact that those trains arrive on time means that they can rely on the Gautrain as a service that they can use daily. But also the issue of safety is one of the issues that was raised by some of the commuters, the fact that the Gautrain stations themselves are safe, and that when they are on board these particular facilities, they are also ensured that they are safe in terms not only of crime but also of COVID-19. We did observe very strict regulations and adherence to some of those COVID-19 regulations, but more than anything, Sally, it is the issue of comfort. and the fact that there is reliability in the Gautrain system, which makes many people say that they are prepared to perhaps dig deeper into their pockets to ensure that they do catch the Gautrain. But Sally, as we speak to you now, we are at a BRT station here in Soweto, and we've been observing here how the BRT operates. In fact, it's one of the systems, you'll know, Sally, that is quite popular here in Johannesburg, especially among residents of Soweto who use it to commute on a daily basis to Johannesburg. And when we're on our way here, Sally, I mean, when we spoke to some of the residents, the issues that they raised was the issue that they prefer also to use this particular sort of service because of the fact that taxis at this particular point are not quite reliable, and that's the reason why they've opted to use the BRT. But as you can see, Sally, quite a number of them here this afternoon to go on board, many of them of course heading to their work areas. But it is all about reliability, it's all about safety, and it's all about the fact that the mode of transport that many are choosing must be cost effective, and it must ensure that they reach their destinations on time. But earlier on I did speak to some commuters on the Gautrain, and this is what they had to say.
We're prepared to pay it for the reliability. I think it's the best mode of transport for South Africa since it started, and we really enjoy it. It's safe, it's reliable, it's on time.
Each time I use it, it's more safe and more reliable and more comfortable than buses. So I always use a Gautrain weekly.
It's because of the safety, and basically like it's a one trip. I don't have to climb off, get up in another transport or things like that, or another taxi. And also for the disease that we're having right now, it is social distancing. Unlike taxis or other transport, and now they're maintaining the social distance, of which I'm grateful of.
All right, so that was the Gautrain earlier. Manqoba, you say you're on the BRT buses now. Could you tell us quickly how the pricing of the BRT buses compares to the average taxi fare?
Also, what we do know is that, of course, the BRT system, for many that we spoke to, are saying that it's a much cheaper option compared to the taxis. But also the issue of, the safety when boarding some of the taxis, the issues of overcrowding in some of those taxis. That, I guess, are some of the motivating factors as to why many commuters have opted for this particular option, which is the bus rapid transit. And the fact that it is a bus system that has a single lane that is dedicated to it only, which means that many of the commuters are able to reach their destinations on time. But in terms of the fare, Sally, what we do understand is that it is graded according to the kilometers that you travel. And the first 10 kilometers, Sally, we do understand it's as low as R8.50, and the highest price that perhaps you expect to pay on a BRT bus system is around 24 Rand. So it is quite an affordable option for many people who don't want to use taxis as well as trains to commute to work.
Well, thank you, Manqoba. So, Mawande, in Durban, let's come to you now. And you've been focusing on taxis, a common mode of transport in KwaZulu-Natal and, of course, across the country. A very agile, many routes. It tends to get you probably closest to your home. Talk to us about the taxi setup in KwaZulu-Natal. How have owners and drivers been coping, particularly during the pandemic?
It's been quite a challenge, Sally, on the part of owners and drivers, particularly during the COVID period, because a lot of people have lost their jobs, which has affected their bottom line. We did speak to one of the taxi operators, and this is what he had to say.
Kodwa okunye khoza ibona abagibeli ngoba bayasazi isimo simi kanjani ngeke ngizikhethele abantu phela ngizobalasha kanjani ngigcwale kuphi iyasuka imoto kamanje ifike etheni ngagcwele.
Well, thank you very much. Mawande, Ronald, coming back to you in Cape Town, you were telling us about the problems the Central Line is having. In fact, it's not functioning at all. You've spoken to taxi owners in the city of Cape Town. Are they capitalising on the train system not being very functional?
Yes, indeed, Sally. Well, the taxi industry is simply thriving at the moment because not given that we've been talking about the train issues, but also several Golden Arrow buses been gutted down this year as well, and there's no knowing who could be behind these attacks. But the taxi industry is also an industry embroiled in a lot of controversy, in a lot of issues, Sally, and that pertains to taxi violence. This year alone, 25 people have died due to taxi violence, and 11 cases of attempted murder have been opened. And there are now fears of retaliation following the death of a taxi boss last week. We heard from one taxi owner who had this to say earlier.
I try to help wherever I can. I was raised well by my parents as a community servant. Even the children that I'm driving now, the madrasa, that we're standing in front of, a lot of times, and then the children don't have enough money for school fees or for traveling, and then I have a raffle that I have the passengers give 5 rand donations. The old people, when it's Sasa time, I drive that people for free. I even just registered my own soup kitchen. We are actually looking for sponsors because the finance, as you can see, I'm driving as a Yaya. I can't even drive a Quantum because all the extra money, the excess money that I do drive, I give back to the community.
A very interesting picture that you're giving us. Thank you very much to all three of you. Ronald Masinda coming to us from Cape Town, Mawande Kheswa in Durban, and on a bus here in Gauteng, our reporter Manqoba Mchunu.